Well, welcome to the Inviting Shift Show. It is Saturday, February something.
26th, maybe?
27th. Yeah, according to my computer right there, it's the 27th. And we have Jenny on today. Jenny comes all the way from Germany to talk about her shift. So this is very exciting. We have a transcontinental aha here. And I am Christina Smith. I am an AHA addict, and basically I go around collecting stories of people's shifts because I'm writing a book, and nothing better in a book but to have some really great stories behind it. So Jenny is going to tell us a little bit about herself, but before she does, I just want to let you know that if you want to be on the show, hey, come join us. You can go right to, I left the links in the side, you can go right to our website, and at the bottom it'll say, do you want to share your shift story? And just click that button and it'll tell you everything you need to know. And that's what Jenny did, and that's why she's here today. So Jenny, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Ooh, I actually hate that question.
Oh, tell us where you're from. You got any animals? You got any family?
No, the thing is, I have so much. Like, I talked to a friend the other day. Well, a couple of friends, and every time I ask them to describe me in one word, they're like, "I need a word that describes something that cannot be described in one word." I'm like, "Thank you, that helps." So yeah, I do a lot of things. I guess you could call me a digital nomad. I've been traveling and living on the road for the past 4 or 5 years, you could say.
Okay.
Yeah, and then business-wise, I do 2 different things. So I run the online magazine, Connection.com. And I also build websites and support coaches, yoga teachers, and life changers with their online marketing and branding, and in a very soulful way. So for me, it's all about authenticity and finding your message and sharing that. So either with business people or with just people who are curious of what their path might be. So that's Connection for individuals, and business is my web design business.
Nice. So a lot of passion-driven stuff, whether it's business owners that are, trying to start that passion, that dream of theirs, or just whatever dream that they're having, some way to shift them in there, just kind of like what I do. And then you also do a lot of the practical hands-on stuff like the marketing and websites and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Very cool. Very cool. So you had a shift for us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
I actually just looked up again and forgot about it. But it basically, I think the biggest shift for me was after graduation, I moved to the US. So that was about 10 years ago. And before that, I moved around a lot. So I think that was really the first step. It was kind of a slow shift. I moved around a lot, and I realized that, so backstory. I grew up in a family where it's very common to blame other people, the government or whatever, for whatever's going on. So, it's kind of like, it's their fault, and you're in this victim mindset. And that's the kind of environment that I grew up in. And then I realized, and then I moved abroad to the US, and that was the first time that I didn't have any, there were no expectations. Nobody knew me, and I could just be whoever I wanted to be. And I realized, you can really just be who you want to be. There's nobody that's going to tell you who you need to be, or at least you don't have to listen. So the way I like to phrase it is that you become the author of your own story.
Yeah. That's really good. And I understand that. I grew up in a household of victims, and it's such a powerless place to be. You can't change anything because it's always somebody else's fault, and that's what I learned about it, was it's always somebody else's fault. Well, then I don't have any power to make the situation any different. But when we can take responsibility for it, it becomes a little different. So what happened after you came to the US and you decided that you could be your own person?
uh, well, a lot of things happen, and I think that kind of shift, it keeps reappearing in my life. So, you know, you kind of reach the next plateau and then the next level, and that's what's been happening a lot in my life, and in every life situation. And I changed them quite a lot. You know, I move around, I go to new places. I studied at four different universities, and then I dropped into classes in Sweden too. So technically, you know, I've been at five different universities, seeing how things work. And every time, you know, you kind of feel the environment, and it's so funny that every time I'm there, I actually feel this desire at first to fit in, and you at the same time you realize, okay, there are these things that don't really fit in with the culture or the environment that you're at. But that's where really the awareness comes from. Okay, this is who the person that I am being right now. And sometimes we don't see that until we change things up. So I think that's something that I try to integrate in my life a lot, is switching things up, and then coming in with an awareness of, okay, who am I being right now, and then looking at who do I want to be. You know, maybe there are things that I kind of fell into the habit of doing, and you become aware once you change it up, because things start to not work properly, and you have to reevaluate, and that's what I do a lot in my life, and I find it such a gift to do that, to switch things up.
And I think with a lot of us, there's like a theme of shift that goes on throughout our life. You know, like some of us have to deal with the mother problem over and over and over again. Some of us have to deal with our procrastination over and over and over again. You know, whatever that thing is that you need to shift. And it sounds like your idea of staying in that flow of shift is by, you know, rediscovering who you are, by going somewhere else and going, okay, well, you know, if I'm this person with all of these people around me and in this environment, who am I if I go over here? Because I think what you're trying to get to is that core underneath part where that doesn't really change, right? I mean, there's a piece of us, our spirit, our soul, or whatever, it knows what it is that we want. And sometimes in order to, I think what I hear you saying is sometimes in order to constantly know what's true about that piece is we have to make different choices and start, you know, just shake it up a little bit and see, you know, what is our truth, you know, is it this thing that we are when we're around these certain people? I mean, because I can tell you when I go home, I become this little child again. Like, it doesn't matter how old I am, my mother and I are always going to have that same relationship because that's who I am around her, you know? And is that what you mean?
Yes, pretty much. And the cool thing is that you can have that experience, that aha moment, on so many different levels. So, you know, you think you got it. And you did to a certain degree. So for me, going to the US and realizing, okay, you know, people don't have expectations of me. And before that, I was not always, but a lot of the time, I was very quiet, and you know, I wouldn't be the one who just went out there and did things. And as soon as I arrived in the US, I discovered that I have this passion for traveling, for exploring, for you know, taking trips, meeting people, you know, living a life that actually is worth telling stories about. And so, you know, and with that passion, people joined in, and we planned road trips. And you know, I didn't I realized like that's me, you know, that's part of me that's very important to me that I haven't really been living. And then just recently, I got into the more spiritual level, which, you know, what you were saying about what is my truth. I actually started playing with that. It's like, okay, who am I on that level? And realizing, hey, you know, I'm actually thinking that life has to be hard is something that I learned too. And it doesn't have to be. The same with business, you know, we're like, okay, in the beginning, when you start out, it's really tough and, you know, you might not get clients. I'm like, that's not true. It depends how you do it and with what kind of attitude. And I realized, you know, if you're, again, you can rewrite your own story here, in business, in your spiritual being, in your, you know, how you interact with friends. And yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's so true, because I mean, it's just like we're always talking about, whatever you focus in on is your target. So if you're focusing on all the things that you really hate in your life, you're going to grow all those things really well. And if you focus on what you really love in your life or what you want in your life, you know, then that's going to be your target, and that's where you're going to end up, you know. And
yes.
I think that we do that with ourselves so often, you know. It's what we call limiting beliefs, is we start going, it has to be this or that, you know. And often it's something like, you know, I grew up thinking you can't live without a paycheck. You have to go work for somebody else because that's a solid job. You need benefits, you need, you know, all of that. And these are things that they're really hard to undo, you know, and that's why we have a lifetime of shift. And I think even when it comes to like really figuring out what we want, like you, it's not just getting a past trauma, but it's about learning who we are. And that sounds like that's kind of like your lifetime shift. And I was going to say something else and it just kind of left me.
Maybe it comes back.
Yeah, but it's just something that we have to repeat and repeat and repeat because, I know what I was going to say, because sometimes what the universe has planned for us is way too big for us to be able to see at one time. So, I mean, if somebody had told you, you know, 10 years ago that in, you know, 10 years you'll be, you know, going around and traveling all over the place and you're going to have to hit all of these places, you know, you start thinking like, oh my God, that's a lot. How am I going to do all that, you know? But when we start doing it naturally and when we stay with that flow of the shift, it's just like our dreams get bigger and bigger and we're able to see these huge things that are really planned for us because we're just doing it. We're just stepping into it and we're doing it. So, I mean, I think that that's one thing that we really need to remember is that, you know, shift isn't something that, you know, oh, I dealt with my mother problems and now they're all gone and I wish. Or I dealt, you know, I figured out who I was. I'm done, you know, like, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah. That's another thing. I actually wrote my thesis. I can't bring myself up, but yeah, I wrote my thesis about transformational travel, especially looking at people or travelers who travel with the motivation to find themselves or with the intention to find themselves. And that was the first thing. And like, you're not going to find yourself. Like, you're not going to walk into a room and yourself is going to be sitting there on the couch. Like, that's not going to happen. It's really about creating yourself. And then at the same time, you know, I do think there's some kind of essence there already, your truth or whatever you want to call it. It's there and you'll feel it. The closer you get to that, you'll feel that because it's massive amounts of energy that come from realizing who you are and living according to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of things come into alignment when we do that. I mean, our life gets better where we can, when we're making conscious decisions about what we're doing instead of just going along with whatever we were taught when we were younger. You know, I could have easily kept all those beliefs, all those limiting beliefs and stayed in a 9-to-5 job and, you know, been miserable every day. I could have done all those things. Of course I could have, you know, but I feel like I live from a much more full place now, rather than just kind of getting through the day. Like I felt like there's a difference between survival and thriving, you know,
Yeah,
and surviving is just, I've made it through. Okay, great. Well, you've made it through. Now what? You know what I mean? Like it's always a struggle. It's never abundance. It's always scarcity.
exactly.
And thriving is when we're like creating who we are. It's, and I love how you say that, you know, there's like underneath, there's a piece of who we are that always kind of stays the same. But then it's our job to create all the rest of that, because we, you know, I really believe that we're not discoveries. I hate when people say, oh, discover yourself. And it's like, we're not discoveries. I mean, there's parts of us who are there and there's things to discover, but we get to create whatever it is. And I think it's so human of us. It's such a human need to be able to create instead of, you know, just find what's there. So, you know, when we put that effort into ourselves, it comes out so much more beautiful than if we just ignore it, you know. And I think a lot of people think ignoring it is what gets them through, but we don't want to get through. We want to enjoy it. You know, we want to freaking love our lives. We want to, yeah, we want to have awesome dreams.
And that's actually what I in the Freedom Compass that I use over at Sonaction as kind of a tool to achieve that. Actually works with that. So instead of, you know, the goal here is not to go from -2 to 0. That is something, yeah, you should try to do that anyways. But the goal with the kind of life that the freedom lifestyle is to go from a 0 to a 2 or a 10, you know, and go up and realize what that is for you. Realize what a 10 would look like for you. And then make your way there and use that, you know, as your dream. And take these steps, baby steps, you know. You don't have to do it all in one day, but yeah, it's actually pretty simple once you, so for me, the most important thing is really knowing my values. What do I stand for? And knowing my core strength. And those are, and then the 10, the vision. What is that for me? And if I have these 3 in place, it's so easy because you know which decision is the right one for you. You know it because you know what you stand for and what your values are. You know what you're going to do today because you're going to do what you're pretty good at or what you're amazing at, because that's when you provide the most value to the world. And that's what the world wants from us. You know, the world wants us to shine. Yeah,
I think so too. And I mean, I and you know, call me a utopian dreamer, but like,
I'm right there with you.
I really believe that if everybody took really good care of themselves and focused on what they wanted to do, that there would be a lot less, you know, hate in the world, a lot less division amongst people, a lot less comparison. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things that we have is we're always comparing ourselves to others when really all we need to do is focus on our own path, you know, and we'll get wherever we need to go instead of being jealous about everybody else's path or, you know, angry about it or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a really great story. Thank you. I'm going to ask you some of these questions now that we ask all of our guests.
Okay.
So what's one word to describe the situation when something wasn't right? So I guess your something wasn't right stage was back in the beginning when you kind of were stuck in a limiting belief because of that's how you grew up. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, and it's the same. So if I have to come up with one word, stuck would actually be the feeling that I have there. And that, like I said, it shows up again and again in my life. You know, I do encounter new challenges where I'm faced with the same idea, and I can come back to that. Hey, I'm the author of my story, and that's who I want to be. And what can I do in this situation where I feel stuck? How can I bring flow back into it?
Yeah, exactly. And I guess so your big aha is that I'm the author of my own story, right? That was like your major aha. Like I can create this however I want. And I remember my moment of that, like when I realized that I didn't have to do what my parents wanted anymore. I was 25. Like,
Yeah.
and that's the first time I was like, hold on, it doesn't matter what my mother thinks. I can do whatever I want. And it seems so silly because by that time I was married, I lived, states away, and I still like had this hook in me, I felt like, until I was like, hold on, I can do whatever I want. It was awesome. And it seems like
Yeah.
such a little thing, but like, to be able to really see that you can make so many different choices opens up so many opportunities to do so much more than you ever thought you could.
Absolutely.
So stuck, that is a good word. Stuck is definitely a place that people, when they're in that something isn't right phase, often get to.
Yeah.
So what would you ask somebody who was in your situation of feeling stuck? What could you ask them maybe to kind of shift their perspective a little?
That's a good question. I think I'd start with asking them about. It's difficult. I'd start with coming up, looking at the past month, and just what are 5 moments when you felt most alive. And start from there, because then you put the person in that energy, and like at first you might think, okay, there wasn't anything, and then you notice things, and you can go from there. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a good starting point. Not look into the future. That was the first impulse that I had. Look, what do you want to create? Mm-hmm. But I think it's much more important to start where you are and look, okay, what's already working for me? And then how can I create that in the future?
Oh, that's brilliant. Yes, that's awesome, because, and also I think that if you can find that moment in the past that made you feel alive, it's possible, and
exactly.
Knowing it's possible is so much easier than trying to, especially if you're stuck and shut down, to be able to dream something bigger can be such a daunting task. Like I remember when I'm in moments of depression, like that's trying to be positive and trying to see these really big dreams is so hard, but being able to see all the great things. And that's so funny because I created this list of, I have all these sticky notes. These are all the wonderful things that I've done in 2016 so far. So that when I start feeling like, oh, what am I doing with my life? I have something to look back on. No, I'm doing great things. This is right. And it's silly little things, but these little things actually help because it reminds you, no, refocus. I'm focusing on my success, not on all this other garbage that's going on. Just focus on the things that I'm accomplishing, Yeah. So that's a great question. Things that have.
I actually, with that, what you were saying, all the positive thinking, what I noticed there is sometimes it feels like I'm arguing with myself when I do that. So you want to find common ground, you don't want to argue with yourself. Right. You're smart, and if you're feeling crappy and you're telling yourself, no, everything's great. You're smart. You know what's going on.
Yeah.
Instead of arguing with yourself, try to find, evidence that things have been great. And then, okay, I can create this again. Like I can do this. I've done it before.
Yeah, and one of the things I've talked about before too is because I used to have that struggle a lot, like screaming back and forth, and it's crazy. It's even this analysis paralysis, and the thoughts just spinning. You're not really getting anywhere. You're making yourself feel awful. That's about it. So I always picture this old granny as my inner critic, like, and the one who tells me all the negative things. So that I can go, okay, I get it. Like you're trying to keep me safe and you're nagging, and it's fine that you're nagging. I'll hear you out, But then you're going to have to go drink your tea in the rocking chair because I got things to do. I got awesome things to do. And so I hear your concerns. I hear what you have to say and I'm good. Like, you know, I don't, those aren't my fears. Those are yours. So it's not about struggling with her. It's about honoring her. I mean, there's a part of you, there's a reason why that voice is nagging you or scared, or, you know, it's just trying to keep you safe most of the time. At least for me, that's what my inner critic is, just like, oh, just be safe. But if I always listened to her, I would be this big, you know, like
Yeah.
I would be so shut in and locked in. So instead, I kind of honor her. I put a little blanket. I even imagine this at least, you know, once a week, that I put a little blanket on her and put her next to the fire and just rock her in her little chair. And then I can put her, you know, her stress down, and I can pick up this list of wonderful things that I've accomplished and go, no, I'm on the right track. I just got to keep trusting. I mean, and that's the big word for me this year is trust. So that's fabulous. Okay, let's ask another question here. So how did you handle the challenges, or what did you say to yourself about the challenges to get you through? So this would be, I guess, when you're traveling and stuff and you're like, I don't know, is this the right thing to do? I mean, it must have been a little bit challenging, right?
There were definitely challenges. I mean, many. I think what I've been saying to myself has kind of changed over the years. And the funny thing is, although I tend to, although I tend to, or as a kid, I grew up, you know, being told I'm a victim. I think there was always something inside of me that just trusted the world, or, you know, or the universe, or whatever you want to call it. Like there was just this deep trust within me. And I cannot explain where that came from, because the way I grew up, I think it wasn't really like, I didn't grow up in a stable environment. We moved all the time, and like things always, you know, were difficult in a way. I remember being a kid, you know, and actually coming into a new school, and I was kind of tiny, and I had glasses, big glasses, and I knew people were making fun of me. And so like I remember that. But then at the same time, you know, I never felt scared. I always trusted that I'd be okay. So I think that is the undertone, and it has become more of a, I'm talking about going from -2 to 0 and then up. It's actually become more empowering in that sense, that I feel more like, okay, you know, what can we create? You know, if I am trusting in the universe or in God, or, you know, whatever you want to call that, if I'm trusting in that, like, what can we create here? You know, even when I encounter challenges, I try to ask myself that. So, you know, it's like, okay, cool. Like, this is here. I can grow with that. And what can I create from it? Yeah.
Nice. That's a good one. I know also some people are just like me, when I get to the point where I just don't know what to do anymore. I'm just kind of like, well, universe is going to work through me, and I'm just going to show up. I'm going to do what I think is right, and hopefully the right thing will happen. You know, like,
yeah, absolutely.
It's about setting that intention too for me. But yeah. And then one word to describe the whole shift for you. Or the continuing shift, I guess.
It's 2 words, but sometimes it feels like coming home. Which is funny, because I don't have a home. Like, I don't have a physical home. But the shifts that are going on, it feels like I'm creating a place that feels like home inside of me.
Nice.
That sounds very, I don't know where that came from, but that's,
no, I mean, that's what you were called to say. I think it's perfect. I mean, it's ironic, and yet at the same time, that's what you're striving to do, is get that coming home feeling. And some of us get that by staying home, and some of us get that by, you know, finding it outside somewhere, or, you know, places where we feel that way inside. Any books or resources that you recommend for shift? Is there anything that you read? I know I threw you off, but was there anything that you've read or listened to, or people that you really look up to that you think have done some really fabulous work? And
there are so many that I find it difficult to really say one. I think the book, if you can call it that, that's been making the biggest impact in my life in the past year was The Course in Miracles.
okay.
Very spiritual, and I'm pretty sure it's not for everybody. I think you have to the course says it's for everybody, but I think you kind of need to be on your journey in that sense, that you're trying to figure out what's the reason that we're here as humanity, so not just me, and being open to these topics. So at first I was super I felt a lot of resistance because I always resisted the term God. I do believe in the universe, but calling it God was something that I associated with a side of church that I had experienced where I didn't really feel at home. So I had trouble with that in the beginning. But now, like, constantly reading it, and I'm actually in a group, we do the calls together and we talk about these topics and bring them into everyday life and trying to understand, okay, what's happening here. And I think that has been something that has been super inspiring and empowering for me. And then, I don't know, I think everybody, any book or resource that helps you figure out who you are. So really, so if for example, one book that has made a big impact in my life was what was it called? I forgot the title. It's Barbara Scher, and she talks about the scanner personality. And before that, I always thought, okay, in order to be successful, I have to do one thing. And then realizing, okay, there's, because I have tons of ideas, and I realized that if I'm working on two projects at the same time, they feed off each other, and they actually, they kind of, I get ideas for that one and then for this one. And the challenge is really finding out, okay, why am I doing this? And I think and then Simon Sinek, Start With Why, a good one along these lines, really try to figure out, find your individual way, and then whatever resonates with you in that sense.
And Daniel put a link to The Power of Positive Thinking in there, which, I couldn't agree with more. But you gave me a link to a band. I'm looking at it.
Okay.
Are you part of this band? I don't see your name in it. But cool. Yeah. The Course in Miracles, I've heard a lot of people get a lot of value out of that. So that's pretty awesome. The Power of Positive Thinking, it is, but the one that you linked me to is an EP. So it's a band's track. But The Power of Positive Thinking is by, who was it? Norman Peale, I think? Something like that.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed that book. I still have it somewhere in my attic. But A Course in Miracles, I really enjoy that too, because I got baptized when I was 18, but I haven't been to church in a really long time because I really love the ritual and the spiritual part of it, but I didn't know that I actually believed in the religion part of it, which is kind of funny, but I got taken in by that spiritual ritual type of traditional thing, And so now I look at it like universe or God, or I don't really care what term you use, as long as you connect to it in some way.
I think that's the powerful thing about the Course in Miracles is that you learn, the term doesn't matter, whatever you call it, because we all kind of feel it, we just give it different names. And once we understand, okay, we're actually talking about the essence here. We're not talking about the names and,
the story,
and I think
all of that, yeah.
So you let go of all these these stories and all that, and you really come back to the essence, and then you realize that you can actually connect with anybody, you know, if you let go of the judgment and come back to, okay, what's the essence here? What do we really want to hear?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so often we forget what our true purpose is, and we start fighting for things that we don't even necessarily want just because that was our goal. It doesn't matter if it's not our goal now. It was our goal, and now we think we should still be doing that. So, let's see what this link is, Daniel. The power of positive thinking. Steve Hawk. See, Norman Vincent Peale. See, I was right. I pulled that one out. That was something. All right. So what's one thing about yourself that you wish to shift in the future?
Ooh, good question.
Yeah.
So right now I'm actually trying to figure out how to I want to go back into workshops and that kind of thing. So I actually shifted from being in the coaching community. Well, I'm still involved in the coaching community, and I still love the work they did. But when I tried to coach, it didn't feel that meaningful to me. And then I switched into, you know, web design and branding and that kind of thing. And now I'm actually making, you know, kind of transitioning back, or, you know, kind of integrating everything I learned on the journey and doing workshops again. And I think that's the kind of shift, you know, seeing, letting go of my resistance towards the term coach, and see, you know, how in that way I can actually help people. Yeah, so I continue on my shift of letting go of labels and just reinventing myself.
Oh, that's very neat, though. I mean, because that, we don't think about it, but you know, what we do is such a label on who we are. We label ourselves because our brains automatically need to categorize things. It's just how our human brains work. So we're always wanting to know where our category is, where everybody else's category is, and how they all organize. So we're constantly putting labels on ourselves. There's, I belong to a women's organization, and there's a young girls weekend that is available for teenage girls. And one of the things they do is really work on, you know, labeling themselves, looking at those labels, and then unlabeling themselves, basically, and finding a way. So yeah, so that's very cool. And I think, like you said, it's, you know, just because you're talking about your shift today, about, you know, being a nomad and finding your home, you know, wherever you are, it doesn't mean that you haven't ended that shift. You know what I mean? That's still something that's going to come back, because every time we shift our perspective, we have to go back and then start questioning everything in our life against that truth, right? I mean, if, you know, if I'm not this label, what does that mean in my work life? What does that mean in my relationships? What does that mean in, you know, my creativity and my passion, whatever? And these things show up everywhere. I mean, your old stories are going to show up everywhere. I talk about it like it's a bop-a-mole, you know, like the mole comes up and you're like, it's never actually done. So.
But I have the feeling that it slows down, actually, or I don't know, like it just feels different than it felt a couple of years ago. If I think about it,
into a flow, like you said, we start finding the flow so that we're not struggling against it. And I think it becomes easier only because we learn how to deal with it on a bigger level, like not just this problem, but like we learn how to just kind of stay open to it, even though it's a struggle, or even though it's something we don't like, or scary, you know. Often when it comes to doing big dreams, it's scary.
Yes.
That's what it comes down to. All right. And what's one thing that you hope to do before you die?
There are so many.
What's one thing you really want to do in the next year?
There are a lot of them as well. I think for me, it's really, if I have to, you know, pin it down, I want to live a life that is worth talking about. And that has been my motto for the past couple of years. And again, you know, when I want to inspire people by the way I live. I don't want to just talk about things, and I want to take people on that journey with me. So I want to show people that they can do that too, you know, and figure out what the freedom lifestyle is something, you know, that is not going to look the same for everybody. It's going to be something that you can figure out for yourself, and what that means for you. Freedom, or, you know, whatever your theme in your life can be defined in so many ways, and finding your definition and then living according to that definition is so powerful.
Yeah.
It
is. It is. I mean, it's an entire shift change, because I think sometimes we're so sure that we're stuck in this like chained thing, like we're kind of chained down, you know, like when I worked a 9 to 5, I felt chained to that desk, and I had to be there every morning. And, you know, just walking into the company, I would cry because I just disliked it that much. And there was nothing wrong with the company. It's just like my dreams were eating me, you know, like all those things, all those ideas, because I'm an ideas person too. And all those ideas that I had were just eating me alive, and creating such dysfunction in my life in so many places, because I felt like I had to do it and I didn't really want to do it. I mean, there's a huge difference between having to do something and wanting to do something. And there's a difference in how we approach them, you know, so that also means how we're, you know, the results that we get or the approach that we put in. And it's like you're saying, you know, if coaching isn't really your thing, then, you know, why focus on it? You know, if it comes, great. If it doesn't, you know, and there's another avenue, then great. You know, whatever it is, just stay in the flow.
And the funny thing is that it's actually coming back in a way. You know, it was just that now it's more with groups, and like it's that obvious. And I could have had that insight 2 years ago, but you know, I kind of went through this transition and embrace that transition, that journey. It's fun, and it can be fun if you want it to be. I guess that's the point. You know, if you think you have to do things, or, you know, you have to figure it out now, it's going to be very frustrating. And embrace the journey.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's like we said, when we struggle against it, it just makes it harder. And I mean, it's going to happen anyway. It's just whether or not we're kicking our heels or going, okay, I let go and just, you know, let it take you. Because I mean, I think that my big thing is, if there's something that's calling you, it's calling you for a reason. Go freaking do it. You know, like there's a reason, especially if it's been calling you for years or months, or, you know, like there's a reason why you keep being called there. So go do it. It's just going to take over your life until you do it. It's going to be the focus, whether you follow it or not. You know, that's what I've learned.
Yeah. And if you don't listen to it, you know, it's going to come. It's going to come in even louder and louder ways. You know, eventually it's a sledgehammer and not just a breeze.
A physical example of that is I got ill probably about 6 years ago, but there was a lot of things that my body was telling me for the 10 years before that was like, okay, hey, you want to go get this checked out? And I was like, no, I'll just take a pill and I'll ignore it, you know, and no, I'll just take a pill and I'll ignore it. And I had joints problems, I had migraine problems. I mean, it just went from one problem to another to another. And my body just kept saying, oh, you don't want to listen to that? Well, here's this one. You know, you don't want to listen to that? Well, then here's, and that's how the universe works. You know, when we ignore the things that are going on in our life that we really need to pay attention to, they just get louder and often more expensive, harder to get through. You know, we're just making it harder on ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's one thing or one person that has triggered or made a huge difference in your life that if you were to hashtag it made a difference, that would be it?
Well, I would say I'm working with a coach, or I worked with her last year and this beginning of the year. it would be her, Sarah. Like she would be. It's phenomenal the work she does, you know. And then sometimes the sessions, you know, you go in and you don't. It feels so. There's so much flow in the sessions, and you don't really realize the stuff that's coming up and that you're working through, because she has such a loving way of working with you through really deep stuff, you know, that I thought it would take me another 5, 6, 7 years to work through. And then, you know, in the past 6 months, it's phenomenal, the kinds of things that have transformed in my life and my business. So, you know, she's a holistic coach in that sense. You know, she can help you with business and life, and, you know, it all integrates, and you realize, hey, it's all one.
Exactly.
Yeah, phenomenal. Definitely her.
Yeah. Oh, cool. And I think that's
and the funny thing about that is that she has a way, she sees things. She sees if the truth. So if you're telling the truth or not, she knows it.
Mm-hmm.
And she will tell you.
Yeah, well,
she's not afraid to tell you. And my ego it has been screaming. The first time I met her, I'm like, no, I'm not going to listen to that. And then I realized, hey, but what she's saying is true, you know, and it's been something that I wasn't willing to look at before. So it's so funny that, you know, she has this really loving energy, and then at the same time, she's going to tell you the truth.
Well, that's a loving energy. I mean, and it's not just about tough love, but it's about not enabling you, right? I mean,
yeah.
She wouldn't be a very great coach if she just enabled you to keep doing the same things that are unsuccessful. And I mean, I think that's one of the best things about a coach, you know, no matter what kind of thing you're trying to do in your life, there's a coach out there that can help you. Yeah. It's just about finding the right one. And
exactly.
And I know that a lot of people, like, they go, well, do I really need a coach? Well, how many years have you been dreaming that? And how many years have you not accomplished any of that? I mean, that's really what it comes down to, whether it's losing weight, transitioning into your own business, retiring even. I mean, any kind of shift that you're having in your life, there's somebody out there that has information on it that could be helping you get through it, asking you really great questions in order to, you know, bring all those really great ahas in your life. And that's what it's about. Yeah. And it's about accountability. I mean, because I went to counseling and I've had coaches, but when you show up every week to have to talk about that thing, your focus automatically goes there. I have clients where they have, in health coaching, they've, like, I do, you know, an intro call just to talk and learn more about them. And then suddenly, like, before the first, like, real session, they've already made like 10 changes because they're focusing on it now and they're more intent on it, you know, so they're being more accountable to themselves. And for me, if I put money out into somebody, I know I'm going to show up. I mean, and it seems like such a ridiculous thing, but my money means something to me. So if I give my money to somebody, I'm really looking for some kind of shift, and I don't expect them to give it to me, but I do expect them to give me the support in which I can find it, like the space. They create a space in which it becomes a lot easier to get there. And
absolutely.
And I completely agree with you. I mean, things that could take us on our own, you know, 5-10 years to deal with, if you're really focused, you can get it done in a few months. I mean, I'm not saying every shift, because there are some things that, you know, take much longer, but a lot of times you can get that perspective so much quicker if you just have accountability. And if you can't afford a coach, get a friend to at least, you know, I'm going to do these things this week and you hold me accountable. And then if I don't do them, I want you to ask me why, you know, so that I can really ponder on, why am I not getting this done, even though this is the thing I want.
Yeah. So. And it's so true. And it's so important to have somebody who can reflect back what you're saying to them. So, you know, sometimes we already have the answer to most of our questions. And the thing that a coach does for you is really, you know, a coach helps you to bring out your answer for you. So, you know, you're in your head and you think, you know, you just can't make sense of the chaos in there sometimes. And if you have somebody to talk to, and again, that could be a really good friend, but make sure you put this focused time aside where you're spending that time trying to figure out your own answers with the help of somebody else's perspective.
Right. And I know we talk about a friend, but the only thing that I always have a little concern about, and this is because I'm in women's groups, often in the world, we want to fix each other's problems. We have friends who want to rescue us and go, oh, it's okay that you're mad at that thing because, that's not your fault. Or we have, I can go home anytime and complain about my life because my mother will tell me how it's everybody else's fault. You know what I mean? I'll go back to that. So yeah, that's easier for the moment, but that doesn't make it easier in life because I still have to deal with those things. And again, like I said, if it's somebody else's fault, that means I can't change anything. I can't do anything. I'm powerless to change the situation. But if I say, okay, well, here's the things that I could do, or here's how I can prepare or whatever, we're focused on the getting where we want to go instead of being stuck where we are. And I think that what's important is that we have support that knows that we don't want the answers from them. We want to be able to come up with our own answers because those are the only ones that are really going to make sense for us. And another big one is, like I said, rescuing when they want to tell you, oh, it's okay, or oh, here's the solution to your problem. You know what I mean? Like none of that works. And so when we sit in women's circles, we have training on that, like how we relate to each other, how we're going to sit in circle, the questions that we're going to ask, when we're going to ask them, and when we're just going to listen. And one of the biggest things I just wanted to point out that you talked about was one of the biggest things is often we just need to hear our words spoken to us. We need to hear what we're saying because some of it will sound crazy when somebody else says it to us. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you're feeling shameful for the sky being blue or whatever. We just, we come up with crazy stuff. And so I think it's so important to hear those truths come back to us because when somebody else repeats the truth, I can go, wow, is that really true? Is that really what I believe about myself? And it becomes so much easier to be able to see the real truth underneath that. Yeah. So that was great. That's basically our show, and it's almost been an hour already, if you can believe that. These conversations go so fast because I find them so fascinating, and I'm always talking to other people who also find them fascinating, so I just love it. If anybody's got any questions, they can hop in real quick. There's an open seat. But otherwise, if you ever want to get on the show, you can just go to our website. It's a link way on the top, invitingshift.com, and just go to the bottom of the page and there's a place where it says, hey, come share your shifts with me. We have a bunch of them coming up. The next one will be on Tuesday, and we're going to have Vicky on, and I'd tell you what she's talking about, but I don't think I know. I have so many people on the schedule, I just constantly forget when's what. Let's see. Oh, finding courage for the call. So she's going to talk about finding courage during your shift, which is really, really important. Without finding that courage, I have one chapter that's called Fortitude and Fear, and that's right after you have the aha, and when you have to actually put the aha into work. And that's hard because that's about making new decisions, risking, stepping out on a ledge.
And also what I noticed, people think, okay, if you take the first step, you're halfway there. That's not true. There's so many steps in between. And we tend to think, because we hear that all the time. Okay, if I take the first step, it's going to be okay. And you take the first step. Well, and then there's the second step and the third step and the fourth, and you start doubting yourself, or, you make decisions that are more according to your old thought patterns because you're still used to that.
Yeah.
And then you beat yourself up for making these decisions, and you forget to go forward. And I think that's this feeling of shame, because you're not 100% living up to that, what you realized last week. It's like,
yeah,
it happens. You're human. Forgive yourself.
Yeah. And like, that's when people want to give up, and I feel so bad, because it's like, no, you got the perspective change. Like, you just have to keep following it through. Like, you have to align your actions and your words to follow through with what that thing is. And it's hard at first. It's not like you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm never going to eat sugar again, and then, like, that's it. Like, that's not how it goes. No matter what your shift is, there's times where I can talk about shift of becoming big or becoming, seen more, but there's always going to be times where I don't want to be seen. There's always going to be times where I want to play small. And that's okay. There's times for that too. It's not about perfection. It's just about aiming where you want to go. I mean, I think that all of our lives are a 80-20 kind of split, or a 90-10 split, where it's like, okay, 80-90% of the time I make really good decisions. Then 10 to 20% of the time, well.
Yeah, that's so, you can get stuck in this, focusing on these 10%. Let yourself off the hook and focus on the 90%. You are doing amazing.
Or start at 20. Yeah, I mean, start at 20, and then next week get to 40, and the next week get to 60, or however you can get there. Get there that way. I mean, especially like with my health coaching clients, they're like, oh, I'm really upset. I know we just started this program, but I only cooked twice last week. I'm like, well, that's 2 more times than you cooked the week before. Like, fantastic. Yeah. You have to get momentum. And once you get that momentum, things become easier, because you're used to making those decisions. It's not such a hard decision every time you make it. Like when we were little, candy, or buy mom something. It was like hard, but now today it's like, okay, well, I can get candy anytime, I'll buy mom something, or whatever it is. The decisions become easier once we make them. It just stinks at first. Don't think it's impossible just because you're being challenged. Challenges are good. They're showing you that you've got potential and you're making it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, then I'm going to wrap up, because we are at an hour now. So thank you, Jenny, so much for coming on. I hope that you come visit the U.S. soon. I'd love to have you and just visit with you. That would be fun. I don't know if you have that in the plans anytime soon, but
who knows? I never know. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been in the U.S. It's like about time.
Well, if you come over, be sure to connect with me. I'd love to just connect in person. And
that would be awesome. Yeah. And thank you for having me on the show. This was so much fun.
Yeah, anytime. And stop by anytime and pop back in and talk about other people's shifts. I'd love to have you.
Yeah. All
right, guys. Well, that's it. Our next show is on Tuesday, like I said, and it's going to be great, just like every other one. Soon these will be turned into podcasts, so we'll have these available as podcasts as well to make it a little easier, travel ready. So I'm going to stop the recording,